History's most powerful empires, like Rome, Britain, Spain, all seemed invincible. So, why did they collapse? We are often told they were murdered by barbarian invasions or political corruption. But what if they committed suicide? You see, there is a deadly and predictable economic cycle that has brought down history's greatest powers. It's a five-stage blueprint for decline, from crushing taxes to the destruction of money that repeats with shocking consistency. It's how empires poison their own economies and sow the seeds of their own destruction. By understanding this pattern from the past, we might just recognize the warning signs for the future. Hi everyone, I am George Economy, PhD economist, and today we will see the reasons on why every empire in history has collapsed. Before that though, take a moment and subscribe to my channel. You will only help spread ideas like this one in more curious minds like you. Every empire begins with a seductive idea: growth. Conquest brings new lands, resources and taxpayers, and for a while it's immensely profitable. Rome's early expansion funded its legions. Spain's American colonization flooded in with silver, and Britain's global network of colonies made it the wealthiest nation on earth. But this model has a fatal flaw, what historian Paul Kennedy famously called Imperial overstretch. As an empire's territory expands, the cost of defending it expands exponentially. A new border isn't just a line on a map, it's a string of forts that must be built, manned and supplied. The logistics become staggering. At its height, the Roman Empire stretched from Syria to Britain, facing immense administrative and logistical challenges. The British Empire faced an even greater challenge: maintaining a global navy to protect its sea lanes. Eventually, expansion stops, but the costs keep rising. The borders are longer, the bureaucracy is larger, and the military is stretched thin. The empire has walked into a trap of its own making. It's now too big to afford, but its leaders believe it's too big to fail. So the state turns inward and begins to devour its own people. When the money from plunder dries up, the imperial government turns to its only remaining source of revenue: its own citizens. This marks the second stage of collapse, the taxation death spiral. You see, the military needs to be paid, bureaucrats expect salaries, and infrastructure must be maintained. To cover these staggering costs, taxes are raised, but not equally. In most empires, the wealthiest and most powerful elites are experts at evading their share. In the late Roman Empire, for example, the immense financial weight of the state fell on the productive classes: the farmers, merchants, and artisans. The 14th century scholar Ibn Khaldun observed this circle, writing that at the beginning of the dynasty, taxation yields a large revenue from small assessments. At the end of the dynasty, taxation yields a small revenue from large assessments. This creates a vicious cycle. As taxes on farmers and businesses become unbearable, they produce less. A farmer whose profits are entirely eaten by taxes might abandon his land. This shrinks the economic base of the empire, which in turn reduces total tax revenue. The government, now even more desperate, responds by raising tax rates even higher on those who remain, accelerating the spiral towards collapse. The state becomes a predator, and its own citizens become the prey. So when the tax base has been bled dry and still isn't enough, rulers turn to one of the most destructive tools in their arsenal: debasing the currency. This is the third and often most explosive stage of decline. It's the ancient equivalent of printing money out of thin air. But the market isn't fooled. People quickly realize the new coin were less valuable, and prices for goods and services began to rise to compensate. This is inflation. What followed was a monetary disaster. By the reign of Marcus Aurelius, the denarius was only about 75% silver. A century later, it contained barely 5% silver. By 265 AD, some coins had as little as 0.5% silver. The consequences were catastrophic. Prices across the empire skyrocketed. People's lives, savings held in currency were wiped out. Trust in money itself disappeared. Trade ground to a halt as people reverted to bartering. The government, in a desperate attempt to pay its bills, had destroyed its own currency and shattered the economic glue holding the empire together. As the economic engine of the empire sputters, a fourth pattern emerges: the decay of the state itself. The institutions created to manage the empire become bloated, inefficient, and corrupt. In a thriving empire, the ruling class has an incentive to maintain the system. But in a declining one, a different logic takes hold. As the pie shrinks, everyone scrambles to secure the largest possible slice for themselves, often at the expense of the whole. This is sometimes called elite capture. Corrupt officials embezzle funds meant for public works or military payrolls. In late Rome and many Chinese dynasties, provincial governors acted like warlords, hoarding tax revenues instead of sending it to the capital. This drained the central treasury and paralyzed the state. Simultaneously, social inequality reaches extremes as the wealthy secured tax exemptions, shifting the burden onto everyone else. This fatal gap between the rulers and the ruled erodes social cohesion, making rebellion more likely. The empire rots from the inside out. This brings us to the final act, the fall, when the empire is economically exhausted, politically divided, and socially fragile. The external threat that was always lurking at the borders becomes fatal. Many history books point to barbarian invasions as the cause of Rome's fall, but this is more of a symptom than the ultimate cause. For centuries, Rome had successfully managed threats from Germanic tribes, but by the 5th century, the empire was a hollow shell. The base currency could no longer reliably pay soldiers, and the crushing tax burden had destroyed the economic base needed to fund a powerful military. An empire weakened by imperial overstretch, oppressive taxes, hyperinflation, and internal corruption is incredibly brittle. It loses its ability to adapt. At this point, it is vulnerable to shocks it could have easily weathered in its prime. This final push can come from many directions. For some, it's a new aggressive rival. For others, it's an environmental shock. Climate change has been linked to the collapse of ancient civilizations, as droughts triggered famines and mass migrations that created pressure weakened empires could no longer withstand. When the end comes, it often looks sudden. The final invasion and battles aren't the cause of death. They are merely the moments when a long, systemic illness finally proves fatal. Overexpansion, crushing taxes, currency debasement, internal corruption, and finally fatal vulnerability to external shocks. This 5-act tragedy is a story that repeats with remarkable consistency throughout history. Each step leads logically to the next one, creating a chain reaction that is incredibly difficult to stop. This story isn't just a collection of fascinating historical tales. It's a recurring lesson. The British Empire, bankrupted by 2 world wars and facing powerful nationalist movements, found the cost of maintaining its global territories impossibly high, leading to rapid decolonization. The Soviet Union suffered from a similar overstretch, with massive military expenditures and the cost of propping up satellite states draining its stagnant economy to the breaking point. These patterns are a warning etched into the ruins of history about the inherent fragility of centralized power and the inescapable laws of economics. They remind us that no empire is forever and that the seeds of destruction are often sown at the moment of the greatest triumph. The ultimate question this history forces us to ask is a difficult one. Are these patterns merely artifacts of the past, or are they a timeless code, one that is still playing out today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for watching this video and see you all in the next one. Bye bye.